Hello, my name is Victor, better known as VJose42 in the card community, and I decided I wanted to do a video to try and help out Kickstarter creators and potential Kickstarter creators with some tips that they can take, hopefully will take, to better improve their chances of funding, especially newcomers on Kickstarter or to Kickstarter projects. Now you might be wondering what gives me the right or what credentials I would have to actually give this feedback and criticism. That I've never done a deck of cards on Kickstarter before or had a deck of cards made. Well, actually, I have had a deck of cards made. It's called a VJose42 deck of cards. Very small print run that I did myself through Ad Magic. It was not successful at all financially, and it's not something I'm really looking to do again. So I have done a deck of cards. As far as Kickstarter is concerned, I was involved in one project before, and it wasn't successful. It was the bicycle diploma cards, and part of that was, I think, to the creator not listening to myself and other potential backers over standard court cards and lack of customization, but whatever. I'll touch upon those subjects in a minute. Also, I have been a part of the Kickstarter playing card community since the very beginning. Since those original decks came out, the first decks came out on Kickstarter, like the Bicycle Brimstone, the Bicycle Actuators, the Bicycle Revision, the Vortex, etc., etc. And I have backed a couple hundred decks of cards already, for sure. I've actually backed lots of projects with playing cards. Not all of them are successful. But I've definitely backed hundreds of projects. Not all of them successful, obviously. And I've seen tons and tons of projects, probably thousands of projects, come and go. Creators come and go. And I've seen a lot of the same mistakes and issues. So let's get right on into it. I'll have broken down into 10 basic tips. Number 10 on the list is consult the community before launching a project and do research as well. You can go to playingcardforum.com, unitedcardists.com, two good forums for playing cards. There's cardists, there's collectors, there's magicians. There's all sorts of people there that are fans of playing cards, that buy playing cards, collect them, they use them, and there's a lot of people there that are active and are willing to give you feedback and criticisms on your playing cards. And they do actually have forums on those forums for creators to go and share their ideas and get feedback. So it's an excellent resource, an excellent idea to do that. Also, when you're going to launch your project on Kickstarter, before it actually goes live, you can share a preview of the project so people can give you further feedback. They can go, well, you might want to have a couple more tiers. You might want to, have some more pictures or change this or that. So that's always a good idea as well. And do research, like I said. I have seen on Kickstarter a plethora of King's Cards projects. None of them that I recall have been successful. If any of these creators had gone on Kickstarter and searched King's Cards, they would have seen a list of King's Cards decks that did not succeed, and they might go, well, maybe this is not such a good idea. Instead of doing that after launching the project and finding out it's not such a good idea. King's Cards, by the way, is a drinking game, which is also a deck of cards. A deck of cards. I'm mumbling a little bit there, but anyways, and they never do well. And every time I see them, I'm like, oh, again? Why don't these people do some research and they'll see that these don't sell. People don't want them. Don't do King's Cards, for goodness sake. And then it's the same thing with other stuff. You got a deck that has a Cthulhu theme. Well, search on Kickstarter, you'll see there's maybe a dozen different Cthulhu-themed decks. Most have been successful, some have not. Some have some combined themes like steampunk and Cthulhu. And you might go, well, you know what? My deck isn't quite on par with these ones that are successful. Maybe I need to improve certain things. Or maybe there's been so many that I don't want to do it anymore because it's overdone and people might not be interested. Or, you can find that this kind of works, this doesn't work, and you can improve it. So it's always a good idea to do research. Tip number 9 is kind of along the same lines, and that is listen to backers' suggestions. If the backers are saying, you know what, it's too hard to distinguish between the black suits and the red suits because the colors are too similar, or it's too hard to distinguish what the indexes are, or the index should be moved over a bit, or the borders are too thick, or whatever the case might be, listen to the backers and put it up to the backers and say, some backers are saying this should be changed. Do you agree or don't you agree? You can do a survey. There's all sorts of things you can do. But it's good to listen to backers because they are giving you points for improvement on what you can do better. Now, going along the same lines, number 8 is communication. Communication is a big thing. A lot of people get frustrated when a project ends and then 30 days later we haven't heard anything from the creator. Did he run off with the money? Is he getting things produced? Post an update every week or two telling people there's not much going on. This has gone off to production and whatever. Just say something, anything. Let us know that you're alive. Respond to comments in the comment section. Respond to messages people send you. Do it in a timely fashion. It doesn't take that long. Promote the project on Facebook or Twitter or the playing card forums. Get people to share the project. And which kind of helps with, getting the word out there, getting it fulfilled. And also post updates, regular updates. And also important, if you say you're going to post an update each and every week, even if there's nothing to say, do it. If you're going to promise to do something or pledge to do something, make sure you do it. Otherwise, it makes you look like an idiot. Or, I shouldn't say idiot, but it just makes you come across, it doesn't sound good for you. Also, very important along communication is if there's issues with the project, tell us. If there's mistakes, if there's issues, admit it. We'd rather hear people, I've seen this dozens of times on projects, people would rather you come out and say, you know what, I made a mistake in calculating shipping costs, I'm short on a little bit of funding, I'm trying to work it out, then not hearing anything for 2 months, and then all of a sudden, well, I was short on money, so I didn't send out all the decks or whatever the case might be. People are willing to help out. They're willing to, in some cases, give a little more money if necessary to see things get done. And they generally, they want you to admit if there's a mistake. Be a man or a woman, whatever the case might be. Admit it if there's a mistake made. Admit it if there's problems. Don't just take your tail between your legs and hide and run away and not do anything and not produce anything. The last thing people want is for you to realize you're short on funds and then not produce anything and then disappear with the money when you could just come out and say, you know what, I effed up. There's not enough money. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll try to figure it out. And some backers will try to give you some financial aid or some help some way or another. And you come across as better. So what? You made a mistake. At least you admit it and you don't disappear. Number 7 on the list is, I put it down as, too much of a good thing isn't good. What I'm talking about is, a lot of the time, people will have a project for a deck of cards, and then they'll start to add on dice and chips and beer mugs and shot glasses and magnets and stickers, and they're adding so many things that it becomes too much. It becomes overwhelming for backers, and it'll become overwhelming when you try to fulfill the projects. And then it becomes a financial issue as well, because then you'll have some people get this, some get that, and you might not be able to cover the expenses of producing all these different things that you're doing. You also have to take it into consideration, take it in another way. A lot of people go to a project to back a deck of cards. They might buy 6 decks or a brick. But then if you start adding on chips or dice or other things, then they might go, well, I want this, I like that. Then they'll take some of the money from the cards and they'll put it here and they'll put it there. So then you have less money for the cards because people are taking the money and spreading it elsewhere. Because a lot of people will say, you know what, I'm only going to spend $50 on this project. So all of a sudden they're buying 6 decks. You start adding on stuff, they'll take some of the money, put it here, put it there, and then you end up with less money for the deck itself. And the same thing goes with those limited, super limited decks of cards. At one point in time, I used to buy 2 of everything. As soon as a limited edition tuck case came along, I would take those 2 decks, put one aside, and I would get the limited edition tuck case. So in the end, the creator was not making any additional money over the limited edition tuck case because I'm still getting 2 decks. It's just instead of being 2 decks and then getting 2 limited edition decks, I'm now getting just 1 and 1. So instead, increasing my funding or doubling my funding, I'm not. I'm just getting a different box with the same funding. So some people will add on the limited edition decks on top of what they're getting. But again, some won't. And again, you have to take into consideration these backers like myself and other backers. We're backing a multitude of playing card projects at any given time. So we're spread thin, funding-wise. And adding on extra limited edition decks, limited edition tuck cases, and all sorts of other stuff just spreads people even thinner. And it's only going to go so far. Eventually, people are going to stop funding decks, in my opinion. But anyways, sometimes it's not good to have too many add-ons in a project. Usually it's not. Hell, ask Albino Dragon. Why? Albino Dragon did a project with Name of the Wind playing cards. They had over $100,000 in funding. You know how much they made on that project? About this much. Nothing. It might have cost them money. Because they had so many add-ons. And then they had issues with shipping expenses and international shipping that they didn't make any money. Too many add-ons, not a good thing. Stay away from that. Number 6 on the list. I apologize if this goes a little bit long. Number 6 on the list is do a good cost estimate. Especially when it comes to shipping and international shipping. Or if you think it's going to be too much of a hassle, don't do international shipping at all. However, that will hurt your project financially if you don't do international shipping because there's a lot of international customers that want playing cards and you're not going to fund it as well and may not fund it at all if it's just American backers. But international shipping can cost quite a bit of money. It's a good idea to do a good estimation on that and find out the right how much it's going to cost. Case in point, there was one project recently came out and said, you know what, I did a crap job on estimates for shipping, and now I can't afford to ship. And it's not the first time this has happened, obviously, but at least he admitted. Other people didn't admit it. They just stopped shipping, but he actually admitted it, although who knows if he's going to be able to ship any in the future. But it is important. Go to USPC before you launch a project. For goodness sake, before you launch a project, go to USPC or whoever you're producing, get an estimate how much it's going to cost to produce the decks. Go to fulfillment, and I recommend fulfillment, and find out how much it's going to cost to ship. Or at the very least, you have to do a very good estimate on shipping with USPS or whoever you're using for shipping. And then, crunch all the numbers. Shipping supplies, fulfillment, add-ons. Then you know how much money you're going to need for a project, and that is your goal. And it's always a good idea to have a goal that is a little bit higher than what you need, just to be on the safe side. Don't make an extra little goal just to fund, and then you'll be short money. Bigger is better, if necessary. I mean, if anything. Number 5 on the list. Simple decks don't usually fare well. People, especially when it comes to Kickstarter, especially when you're paying $12, $15 for a deck of cards plus shipping, they want decks that are completely custom. Court cards, pips is good. Aces, jokers, the back design. They want elegance and sophistication. They want decks of cards that are beautiful art pieces and collectible. They're not looking necessarily for decks of cards that are very simple, standard, and for Magic. And I've seen a multitude of decks on Kickstarter that were made by magicians for magicians, but guess what? They didn't fund because they're too simple, too standard, and people aren't into that. A lot of people get upset over all the Daniel Madison decks that come out and the Fontaines that come out. They're overly simple, lack customization, and I mean, yeah, they do very well for the most part, but other people try to replicate that on Kickstarter and they don't do so well because there's already a lot of those out there and the costs are too much. Also, excuse me a minute. Also, when it comes to these simple decks that are made by magicians for magicians, take this into consideration. Magicians, they're going to take a deck of cards, they're going to use it a lot, and they're going to destroy it. They're going to do torn and restore effects. They're going to have cards signed and given away. You really think they're going to spend $12 for a deck on Kickstarter when they can buy 6 or 7 decks for that price of bicycle or tally-ho decks elsewhere? It's much cheaper for a magician to use a bicycle or tally-ho deck of cards and destroy it and get new ones and replace them than it is to buy decks on Kickstarter at $12 each and replace those. It only makes sense. Magicians are not going to go buy decks at $12 a piece to perform with and destroy, and it just doesn't make sense financially. So, I've seen lots of decks that are simple, overly simple. Sometimes minimalist decks do okay, but a lot of times they don't. People, when they go to Kickstarter, quite simply, they're looking for decks that are custom and beautiful and elegant and nice art. Not something simple and basic that they can get elsewhere for much less. So please take that into consideration. Don't copy Daniel Madison. Nobody wants that. We got enough of that. And for much less. Number 4 on the list is use fulfillment. Can't stress that enough. It may seem like it would be an extra expense. However, a lot of people will underestimate how much work it is to ship hundreds of projects. And it's overwhelming and you'll get frustrated. Believe me, you will. It's happened and it will happen again. Especially when you realize that you got all these add-ons and every package is different and you have to assemble them all and take hundreds of packets to the post office every day, and it gets frustrating and overwhelming. It's much easier to let a fulfillment agency do this. It's much more guaranteed for the backers because they don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to be able to handle it. And it's also much faster for backers as well. So fulfillment is always a good idea. And I recommend it. You can do Gambler's Warehouse, maybe Collectible Cards does some, King's Wild. There's all sorts of fulfillment agencies that can offer fulfillment for decent prices. Number 3 tip. Start small. What I'm getting at with this is don't put a deck of cards on Kickstarter as a bicycle deck of cards with a $10,000 or $15,000 goal just for the sake of it being bicycle or USPC. Because I've seen a lot of decks that were mediocre at best. And even though they're bicycle branded. Like a lot of people think that if a deck of cards is bicycle, it's United States Playing Card Company, it will fund automatically. That is simply not true. In fact, many times it is a detriment because to do a deck with a USPC, it's going to cost you $10,000, $12,000, $15,000. That means your goal is a lot higher than it really should be. A lot of deck of cards, they're fine and they do get some support, but not enough to be a USB-C deck. And a lot of the times, a lot of these decks that start off as a bicycle branded deck, they fail, then they get relaunched, produced by Make Plain Cards or Liberty Cards for $2,000 or $3,000 or even less, just so they can be funded and produced. Well, that seems kind of ass backwards in my opinion. Why not launch a project on Kickstarter for a deck of cards produced by Make Plain Cards or Liberty Cards or whoever, $1,000 goal, $3,000 goal, whatever, and then have a USB-C bicycle deck as a stretch goal. That way, at the very least, if you get a couple $1,000, it gets funded, it gets produced. If it does really well, if it's that good, and it gets to the bicycle stretch goal, then it becomes a bicycle deck. Instead, what happens most of the time is, like I said, people put a bicycle, whatever, deck of cards on Kickstarter. It fails horribly. Then they relaunch as MPC or Liberty Cards. And then maybe they're successful with a lower goal. But why not start off small and then go big if it's successful enough, if the demand warrants it? It'd be a lot better for Kickstarter creators if they did that. Start small, then go big. You can't, you always have to start small whenever you do something, whatever it is. Starting small, you can't, come out with this big thing, bicycle branded deck, and then it doesn't work. You have to start small and then get bigger. Sorry for being repetitive, but I can't stress that enough. I've seen it so many times. It's just ridiculous. It's going ass backwards. If you've got the support, if you know you got the support, and it's a good deck, and it's going to sell, then fine, do bicycle branded. But if not, if you don't have the support, you've never done a project before on Kickstarter, you don't have the followers or the supporters, then chances are, especially if it's a mediocre deck, that's not going to fund. Start small, then work your way up. Number 2 on the list, artwork. Big one. Have the artwork for your project done. Preferably by the time you launch your project. If not, at the very least, by the time you end your project. So that way, when the project ends and it's funded, you have the artwork ready to go to USB-C or whoever is producing it. Or, even better, you can get it approved by USB-C or whoever before the project ends. So when the project ends, you give the money to USB-C and production starts as soon as possible. Less delays, faster turnover. It's good for the creator, it's good for the backers. There's several projects I've seen where they have dragged on for a year because artwork was not done, and in some cases, I'm still waiting for decks to be done, and it's absolutely ridiculous. And people might go, oh, well, it's not the delays with the USB-C. No, it's not delays with the USB-C. It's delays with the artwork not being done. Artwork should be done before a project is launched, or at the very least by the time a project ends, so that way, by the time the project ends, you can get the artwork to USB-C for approval, if not before it ends, and not sometime after. Also, it is good and important and recommended to have artwork on your project page. People want to see what the box looks like. They want to see what the faces look like. They want to see what the backs look like, the court cards, the aces, the jokers. They want to see if it's custom or not. If you launch a project, like some of them are there right now, and there's no artwork on it, or all we see is maybe a back and the ace of spades, well, automatically the first thought that comes when you don't see court cards or faces is, it's standard. People do that all the time, post pictures on the forum. Oh, well, looks like standard faces because they're not showing the faces. And that happens all the time with the big companies, Dan and Dave and Fury 11, whatever. They don't show pictures of the faces of the cards. Automatically, people know it's not custom. It's just standard court cards and pips. So if you do that on a Kickstarter project, it's going to be the same result. So having the artwork is done is important. Having the artwork done is important. Having it displayed is equally important, so people know what they're getting, if they like it or not, and if they want to get it or not. And then I got one more tip, and that is not necessarily, I mean, I'm not going in any kind of order here, but the last tip that I had is number 1 is don't do a project that is over 30 days. Why? Well, for the most part, the projects I've seen that are for 40 days or 50 days, they actually don't get funded. They just drag on and on and on and on. Kickstarter creators, especially newbies, newcomers, have this preconceived notion that, the longer my project is on Kickstarter, the more eyeballs, the more chance there is of more people seeing it. Fact of the matter is that's obviously not true. The fact of the matter is, no, the longer the project is on Kickstarter, the more times the same eyeballs see it, the same people see it over and over and over, and not new people. You gotta face facts. The people that are backing projects on Kickstarter, that are in this community, it's not that big of a community, and most of the projects are backed by the same people. So it's the same people that are seeing the same projects over and over and over. So if you have a project for 40 or 50 days, that doesn't mean that many more people are going to look at it. So there will be some additional people that look at it. But for the most part, it's the same backers looking at the same projects over and over. So having it for 40 or 50 days is not going to increase your chances of being successful or getting extra backers. You might get a couple more backers, but it's not going to make that big of a difference. And it seems like a lot of creators think that, if I run it for 40 or 50 days, a lot more people will see it, and there's a lot more chance of it getting funded. Like I said, that's not true. It's just the same people seeing it over and over, and not more people seeing it. At least in my honest opinion, and that seems to be what is happening. That is my tips for improving Kickstarter projects. I think a lot of those would be for the benefit of the creator if they took those into consideration and did them. You'll hear a lot of people on the forums and in the Kickstarter card community saying the same things. We want communication, we want openness, we want customization and creativity, etc., etc., artwork, and so forth. Anyways, I apologize if it's a little bit long. I'll have more videos in the future. More deck reviews coming, more unboxings, etc., etc.